joining us now to discuss Bitcoin price and more is Rich Rosenblum, co-founder and president of GSR Markets in Puerto Rico there. Hello there, Rich. So what's behind this fall in your view, and how low can Bitcoin go? What's the bottom?
Great question. I think number one is obviously macro, which is driven by rates, and we've had an extreme rally over, say, a decade, which I don't think it's coming to an end, but at least a pause with the change in the rates regime. I think the other is the executive order. Biden said it's coming out in roughly a month, which is going to say how the regulatory regime in the U.S. is going to look at crypto in a more holistic way. So even if that's potentially bullish long term, I think it creates more fear in the short term and could cause some positioning shuffles. In terms of a floor, it's very hard to call the broader macro regime. We've rallied so much. If there was another 20% drop in S&P, I could see Bitcoin dropping another 10,000. But then again, there's a lot of uncertainty in the space. It's still bleeding edge tech that there's a lot of future promise in. But in terms of what's going to happen over this next few months, it's anybody's game. But I think that the long-term bull market is still intact. And I think the same way we had in March 2020, could be able to pick up some Bitcoin on a discount or other crypto assets. We're seeing a similar picture here where even though the macro markets continue to fall over this past 24 hours, Bitcoin's catching up.
Are you seeing this as a buying opportunity? And I wonder, what is your strategy on weathering this downturn?
I think that staying away from leverage and scaling into a position on the way down, probably the 2 points I'd stick with. Less of a day trader. I think that if you're hodling for the long term, these are good levels to add.
How are the options markets doing? Are they leaning bearish, or you mentioned stay out of leveraged positions, but are you still seeing leveraged positions out there? Have they been shaken out?
Yeah, I think compared to traditional markets where volatility pops when the market falls, crypto, the positioning is that there's a lot of call buyers, and so vol tends to go up as the market's rallying. So we've seen, for the most part, vol markets soften these past 2 weeks, aside from on Friday where there was a big drop. But yeah, I think we'll probably see more people entering the market and buying calls over this next 2 weeks so that they can limit their downside but still keep that leverage to the upside.
It's interesting you say that, because you would think this is a buying opportunity, but so far the whales, institutional buyers, have not been taking the current prices, although we are seeing a modest bounce right now. But where are the buyers, and why do you think that is, that they're holding back?
I think there's the phrase, people don't want to catch a falling knife, and there's really a retail type mindset where people are viewing what's been happening in the market and think that momentum will continue. Once we stabilize, I think people step back in, but for now, sort of watching the headlines and macro and waiting for that stabilization to occur.
Do you think we're in a correction or a bear market?
I think that it does feel like we're potentially in a bear market for macro, but does that mean that it's going to be a bear market for crypto? It's yet to be seen. I think we're still in a bull market for crypto.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of alts, or where you're seizing opportunities elsewhere, how do you see the outlook outside of Bitcoin?
I think with the new regimes we're looking at, with gaming, play to earn, NFTs, the metaverse, these are still very young areas, and still a lot of new entrepreneurs coming into the space. So I think those are probably areas where they're going to be not safe from macro, but a little less correlated than inflation protected type assets. So if you do have those macro type fears, I think those are good areas to stick with. And there's probably the most adoption we've seen in NFTs and gaming. So there will be metrics to look at that are sort of outside the trading oriented metrics.